News and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Tax day. That's right, April 15th. I know, still got Monday to get everything in. They have done that. Going to get to the 18th before everything has to be in. But for me, 15th, always the day. Always the day. And hey, the Bidens and the first and second couple put out their tax returns, still holding the breath, waiting for the Trump tax returns. Now remember, we were told they were going to come. The Trump tax returns were eventually, someday, possibly, maybe, and yeah, they were going to come. Yeah, that was going to happen. One day, it will happen. No, it's never going to happen. But the Bidens made $610,702 last year. They paid a tax rate of 24.6% on that $610,000. Vice President Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff, they made a cool $1.6 million in 2021. They paid 31.6% tax rate. They went into their charitable deductions and all that stuff. But yep, they paid their taxes. Now, as we talked about the other day, this puts them in the upper end. You know, obviously the vice president and her husband in a higher tax bracket than the president and first lady. Not in the rarefied earth of the air of the Bloombergs, of the Gateses, of the Musks. Not up there, but still well above the vast majority of working folk. But they still paid. Like I said, Biden paid 24.6%, was it? And the vice president and her husband 31.6% overall. Now, like I said, Bloomberg the other day, on his billions, $2.5 billion a year he averaged pocketing from 2013 to 2018. And he paid a tax rate of 4.1%. You go, how's that possible? How is it possible that the vice president and her husband paid 31.6% and made 1.6 million, and this guy made 2.05 billion? Three entire more zeros, and paid 4.1%. How is that possible? Well, obviously it's possible because, well, they bought the best tax code money could buy. Lots of loopholes, lots of ways to shield money, lots of expensive attorneys to be able to do some of that stuff. In fact, thanks to our friends at ProPublica, the 25 wealthiest folk in our country, the folks in the 0.0001%, we're talking way up at the tippy top. They, during the 2014 to 2018 period there, they pocketed $401 billion collectively and paid $13.6 billion, or for those good at math, 3.4%. 3.4%. You go, but Rick, the rich people pay all the taxes. At least that's what Mike Gibbons, the guy who's running for Senate in Ohio, would have you believe. Rich people pay all the taxes. And when you look at the big numbers, because you go, wow, rich people paid $13.6 billion. These 25 people paid $13.6 billion in taxes. Oh my gosh, that's such a huge number. It's enormous. I can't even imagine. Then when you go, hold on, 13.6 is a lot. But when you compare it to 401 billion, you go, it's 3.4%. How do I pay an effective rate of 3.4%? Because look, I'm going tomorrow to my tax guy. I don't want to know what I got to pay. I don't want to know because it's going to hurt. I'm going to pay it because I don't have a choice, but I'm going to pay it and do it, because I know we need to fund things like schools and healthcare and roads and bridges and moving the country forward. I struggle knowing that we're paying this so that, well, Mike Bloomberg can pay 4.1% on over $2 billion a year. And to have someone like Mike Gibbons say, well, those middle class people, they're not paying their fair share. So I got to ask you, does the world seem kind of upside down today? When you hear the right wing talk, especially my Tea Party friends, I still remember you. I'm still seeing you. My taxed enough already, folks. I still love that. And the reason I throw that out there is I remember I met a guy who had the tea flag. He had the snake flag. He had the whole, he was dressed to the nines, all the regalia you could imagine. Bought the T-shirt, bought the hat, had it all. Didn't know what it stood for. Had no idea that tea actually meant something. He thought it was the Boston Tea Party thing. He thought it was about throwing tea over the side of them, and it was actually tea. No. It stood for taxed enough already, and I explained it to him, and he was like, oh, that's why it's all capitalized. You go, yeah, welcome to the club. Welcome to, never mind. But here's the thing, and this is where we're in a weird spot, because you've got, these angry, mostly white guys, these angry white guys who are taxed enough already, don't tread on me. You've got these folks who believe that they're just being mugged at every turn. The government's robbing me. And then you've got the rich people going, well, you don't pay enough, working stiff, while they are not paying, really, 3.4%. Now we know this because the folks over at ProPublica did a deep dive, got a whole treasure trove of tax documents, and got smart people to go in and dig through these because these are complicated. And the reason the tax code is so complicated is so rich people can pay really smart people to get them out of it. The reason I can't do my tax return, there's just 110 pages of I have no idea what you're talking about. And every year he plops down this encyclopedia of tax jargon. And I go, okay, I trust you. I'll sign here. I'll write the check. And it shouldn't be this difficult. Shouldn't be. This is where the right wing gets me. I wish you, okay, let's figure this out. But our wealth class, they want it complicated. They need it this way so they can hide behind it. And it's not just the top 25. It's the folks all the way up there. The 400 richest people in the country. People making more than 110 million a year. Those folks, they can get a little extra cheese on their hamburger when they need it. They're tightening the belt when they need to. 110 million doesn't go as far as it used to. But still not a bad gig if you can get it. Their effective tax rate, and this is one of those things where you just go, are you kidding me? These are supposedly our folks, way up at the top. These are the folks who are making all this money. 110 million, you could pay some of that. 17%. And you go, wait a second. How is that? Especially when you look at the fact that the average everyday working stiff, people like you and me, people who are making 45 grand a year are paying an average tax rate of 21%. How is it someone making $110 million is paying 17? How is that? How is it? How's it possible? How is it possible? Bill Gates, who from 2013 to 2018 was pocketing an average of 2.85 billion, talking billion with a B, had a federal income tax rate of 18.4. How's that possible when the person who literally cuts his grass is paying a higher tax rate? I mean, Warren Buffett has said this before. He pays more than his secretary. His secretary pays a higher tax rate than he does. And that's not right. A married couple with one kid who earns 200 grand paid an effective rate of 26%. How's that possible? How's it possible someone making $200,000 a year is paying an awful lot more than someone making $110 million? And when Joe Biden said, hey, maybe, here's a thought, got an idea, maybe the person making $110 million, maybe we should have a minimum tax. Maybe, here's a thought, maybe Mike Bloomberg should not. Maybe Mike Bloomberg and his $2 billion a year, maybe he shouldn't be paying 4.1%. Maybe there should be a minimum to this. It's not like he can't afford it. It's not like he's going to have to decide, oh, gee, do I get do I get the store brand mac and cheese, or can I splurge on the name brand? It's not like he's making those choices like average everyday working people. No, he's not doing that. In fact, I doubt he's ever stepped into a store. I'm sure he pays someone to do this. And this is where I come back to the sad reality is our tax code is screwing working people all the time. And until we wake up and we fight back and demand better, we're going to keep getting the shaft here. This is, for me, these are election issues. We've been hung up on these social issues. And I've been in these long discussions about abortion and gay marriage and trans rights and all this stuff. And, I've done some podcasts with other shows, and I go, to be honest, I don't care about those issues all that much. And I don't think as a country we really should either. I think we should take a position of, I want you to lead your best life. I want you to pursue life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I don't want government intruding in your life. I believe this is where conservatives used to get. You had me. Smaller, less intrusive government. Don't bother me. Don't get in my life. Don't harass me. Definitely don't tell me how to raise my kids if we've got situations. Don't do what Greg Abbott is doing. Don't do what Oklahoma is doing. Don't do what Republican states across this country are doing right now. You used to have me. You used to have me there. And then you went crazy and said, yeah, we're going to lead your life except when you do things that we don't agree with. And then we're going to legislate and beat you into submission. I'm someone who believes in economic liberty. I'm someone who believes in fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, and fairness. And I've always believed that if we can level the playing field and people can lead a good economic life, all the other stuff will come around. But here's the sad reality. The sad reality is the right doesn't care about it, because they're hell-bent on making our lives worse. And when we come back, I got to go through what's going on in Florida. Again, the man from Florida thing. This is just nuts, but predictable. And predictable in a bunch of ways. But tax day, want to hear your thoughts? How much is it going to cost you this year? And would you like to pay a 4.1% rate? You think you could get a gig like Bloomberg? And would you? Because I think it would really harm our country to have more people like that. Just I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Make sure you can take the program anywhere you go. Share it with some friends. Do all that. You can find that at thericksmithshow.com as well. Quick break. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Florida. Look, I love Florida. You know, we used to go spend Christmas in Florida every year. Did it for years. And had a ball, had a lovely family time. And then the pandemic screwed that up. But politically nuts. And this most recent thing that Florida State Representative Carlos G. Smith tweeted out, evidently, according to the Florida Department of Education, they did a thorough scrubbing of all of the math books in Florida. Page by page, paragraph by paragraph, math problem by math problem. And they have said that 41% of the submitted textbooks are impermissible with either Florida's new standards or contain prohibited topics. The reasons they say for rejecting the textbooks include references to that theory about race that's critical. Yes, there is critical race theory in math. Inclusions of Common Core or unsolicited additions of social emotional learning. And they go through and say that, you know, in the younger grades, K through 5, 71% of the textbooks did not align properly with Florida standards. And you go, maybe Florida standards are crazy. And you look through some of the stuff that they go through and you go, maybe your standards are way off. Now, they say 28 of the textbooks, 21%, are not included on the adopted list because they incorporate prohibited topics or unsolicited strategies, including the dreaded CRT. 14 or 11% include on adopted list because they do not align to the best standards and I guess incorporate prohibited topics, including CRT. And this is where you go, okay, so give me some good examples. Well, they didn't really have any. And so my mind was going in this kind of warp speed, going, well, what kind of textbook in Florida for math would be acceptable? And I kept coming back to, well, of course, the Bible. That's the only book that they say should be in schools anyway. And this is kind of where they're going. And yes, I know, but Rick, where in the Bible are you going to find math? Nowhere. That's the point. I kind of think that these are folks who don't even get math. So what purpose having math books? There's part of me that goes, you know, I really want to know what made them go through this and what story problems they found objectionable. And What group of Karens got together and said, no, this is too bad? Here's the bottom line, and this is the scary part of this. None of this is about what's in the textbooks. None of this is about what's actually in front of kids. They're making the classroom the battleground. They're making the classroom the battlefield. They're attempting to destroy public education as a whole because they don't believe in public education. They want to segregate schools again. This is all going back into the 50s, when Milton Friedman came up with the idea of vouchers to help segregate schools and keep them the way they were. Good white people over here and everybody else over there. That's the way they view the world. And understand that. And look, it's even worse than just white and black. It comes down to now even segregating white people off because you're not the right kind of white purple. White purple. You're not the right kind. You don't believe what we believe. We're really heading in this bizarre space. And education, I've been saying for years, is that fight, because the wonder of public education is it exposes you to so many different things. And makes you think in different ways and challenges your views and challenges. Like my kids challenge my views all the time. And most of the time they do it, as kids do, just to push my buttons. And I encourage that. That is a good thing. That not only makes them think, that's right, makes me think. And I grew up at a time where discussion and debate and challenge was a good thing, was actually encouraged, was something that, we wanted. Instead of just having a bunch of sycophants walking around going, with their head up the guys behind in front of them and not looking right, not looking left, nope, walking in lockstep. That's the bad part of this. And I fear for the people in Florida whose children now, I guess, aren't going to get math books. I guess no more math books. Because you know what? There might be something that somebody finds objectionable. And this is the weird thing. You put anything in front of people, someone is going to find something objectionable. In fact, just to be a wise guy, I can find objection with anything. And we know that there are those people out there. We've seen Karen in action. Karen's crazy. We can't let Karen lose. And her counterpart, Carl, or whatever the male, Brad, I think Brad, is Brad the male Karen? This is the problem. We got too many people who don't have things to do other than stir up trouble and cause friction. And attempt to make their little moment. And maybe this is a problem with social media. Maybe this is a problem with how our politics have evolved. I'm not quite sure yet. But this isn't good. This is moving us in all of the wrong directions. When we can't have open and honest discussions, when we can't look at someone and say, sit down, and okay, you had your say, you're crazy, you're wrong, go away, we're in trouble. This stuff, crazy. Critical race theory not being taught in schools. In fact, no one's even been able to explain it to me yet. Now, I have had law professors who have tried. Because they're law professors. They're not kindergarten teachers. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you grab the podcast if you're just joining us or if you've missed any of the program. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day the telephone girls, as they were called, walked out on strike against New England Bell, essentially crippling communications in 5 New England states. It was considered the most massive strike of women workers since the uprising of the 20,000 in 1909. They were members of the all-women National Telephone Operators Department of the IBEW. Historian Stephen Norwood devoted many pages to the strike in his book, Labor's Flaming Youth. The government had taken over the nation's telephone and telegraph industries during World War I and placed it under the control of Postmaster General Albert Burleson. Just days earlier, thousands of angry women who worked in the Boston exchanges packed Faneuil Hall, demanding immediate strike action. Julia O'Connor, the leader of the Telephone Operators Union, called for the strike on this day at 7 a.m. The union demanded a 60% wage increase and full scale to be reached after 4 years instead of 7. Union and non-union alike responded to the strike call and walked off the job, establishing 24-hour picketing. On the second day of the strike, over 1,000 striking telephone operators marched through the streets of Boston and were cheered on by returning soldiers. O'Connor organized picketing around the Boston hotels where out-of-town strikebreakers were housed. Unionized service workers across the city denied services to the scabs. Postmaster Burleson smeared the striking women as unpatriotic and threatened to replace them with returning soldiers. The soldiers, however, sided with the telephone operators. After 5 days, the union won direct bargaining rights and a $4 a week raise. The strike was considered one of the few post-World War I strikes to end in victory. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I think we can now say the obvious. The Republican Party has gone bull-goose bonkers. Its leaders have turned the once proud GOP brand into an unprincipled gaggle of corporate profiteers, hate-mongers, and screwball conspiracy theorists. They're so far out that the Hubble telescope couldn't find them. But where is my Democratic Party? Here's a transformative opportunity to forge a solid political coalition, a multiracial, urban-rural, farm-labor alliance based on fundamental principles and programs of fairness and opportunity for all. Isn't that what the party says it stands for? This is the prime time to demonstrate it, to reach out and unite ordinary Americans behind a national agenda of lasting progressive change. It's not like the party elders would have to start from scratch, for an energized, feisty movement of grassroots battlers against corporate greed and government injustice is already organizing, winning, and growing popular support all across the country. But rather than welcoming and building on the exciting advances of these popular movements, the party's old-line insider clique of big funders, consultants, and corporate politicos passively assume that the GOP's goofiness and nastiness will turn off enough voters that Democrats can win by default. Meanwhile, the establishment insists that Democrats only push modest incremental reforms so as not to offend corporate funders or spook moderate Republicans. Hello, brilliant strategists. A primary function of the Democratic Party is to offend the corporate powers. Also, there are only about 6 moderate Republicans left in America, so appeasing them is not a big win, especially when it costs you the support of grassroots voters eager for a politics bold enough and big enough to end business-as-usual economics. This is Jim Hightower saying, as our own history teaches, it takes intentional gutsiness to create a politics that matters. Republicans won't do that. Will Democrats?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So love this story. Madison Cawthorn, the Republican representative from North Carolina, although I don't know how long. I don't know that he's going to do well, especially when you got both senators in his state basically mocking him. And I think it's because of the orgy and cocaine thing, which I think is probably the only thing he's ever been right about. To be honest, which is the weird part in all this. Evidently, he's raised $3.5 million this election cycle, but evidently only got $115,000 on hand. Not going to help him down the stretch here. And I got to wonder, what do you do with all that money? Is that what he pays his speeding tickets with? Don't know. But it'd be an interesting forensic audit of that money to see what Maybe it is. Maybe it's orgies and blow. Who knows? But here to share some thoughts on maybe where the money's going and some of the other top stories of the day, I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come share some thoughts with us. Max is a Democratic strategist, also columnist over at The Daily Beast. You want to check out the work that he does over there, thedailybeast.com. We'll get links out on social media. Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you think? $3.5 million, got 115,000 left. That's a pretty good clip of spending. I kind of wonder what he did with it.
Yeah, and we could tell from some of this that it's gone to consultants, it's gone to advisory groups that have cut Facebook and expensive TV ads for him that were very similar to what several Republicans were doing during the 2020 campaign of cutting these sort of Hollywood expensive TV ads that played to nobody, that were just essentially for their Twitter engagement. And we see with Cawthorn that all this Twitter focus, all this sort of MAGA Trump, not going to legislate, just going to do TV stunts, is really starting to backfire. I mean, he has serious Republican primary opposition in a way that most Republicans don't.
Yeah, he's one that I hope goes down. But the weird thing is I was sitting there and going, is it possible you could get someone worse than him? Because this election cycle, I'm expecting the normalization of Marjorie Three Names, gun fetish Barbie, Gomer and Gosar. I'm expecting them to be the new normal of the GOP, and the incoming class in 23 to be the new crazy, the neoconservative, the neo-Q, if you will, a little bit further off the deep end, a little bit further off the beaten path, and a lot crazier.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because this cycle we have a lot of Republicans running who served in some capacity or other in the Trump administration and who are running with Donald Trump's explicit endorsement, who are running in some cases against the wishes of Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. But if they come in, they're going to be just like Lauren Boebert, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, these are people who will know that they owe their position to Donald Trump and the money that he brought to their race, not to their voters or to the American people. And that's going to create just an even more unrepresentative system. We're going to see this become even more of what it is on the right, which is a pipeline to Fox News, to profitable right-wing media deals by just spending a couple of years in Congress doing nothing but sowing dissent.
Yeah.
And whoever has the flashiest show wins.
Yeah. Now, you brought up Trump and his endorsement. I found it interesting that Trump came out and endorsed J.D. Vance, simply because all during 2016, Vance just skewered him. I got to tell you, I got to be honest. This seems like growth for Trump for me. This seems like maybe he's growing politically, that he might be able to put slights of the past behind him, because I never imagined he was going to support Vance.
I was more suspicious about this because J.D. Vance, like Dr. Oz, is kind of Donald Trump's type of grifter. He's this person who's parlayed a book into this sort of position of thought leadership in a party of no thoughts. J.D. Vance is what passes for an intellectual in the Republican Party now, even though he's largely just restamping Trumpism in a sort of Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, tech-savvy way that appeals to Republicans in Silicon Valley and Republicans in California. And the challenge here is that a lot of Republicans who support Trump and who are leaders in the MAGA movement are really unhappy with a lot of these recent endorsements. They think they're not strategic, that they're just impulsive, as if that should shock anyone at this point. But it's starting to divide the MAGA movement in a way that we haven't seen before. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, especially when he starts losing some of these races. Now, I found it interesting watching some of the other candidates in Ohio and how they responded. And it shows just how firm of a grip Trump still has on the Republican parties, because none of them went after him. They were all, oh, hey, we look forward to your endorsement when we win the primary, and really soft kind of tiptoey kind of language. And I'm going, man, if you didn't endorse me, the heck with you. I'll show you. We're going to whip his behind, especially since today the polling out of Ohio has Josh Mandel leading in Ohio and not J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it does show you how completely Donald Trump has the reins of the party because he controls the money and the messaging. The Republican Party's become almost entirely dependent on Donald Trump and Donald Trump's supporters as the financing arm of that party. So what he says is going to go. So people like Josh Mandel, who spent 2 years now essentially selling out whatever he once believed in order to appeal to Donald Trump and essentially debasing himself across the state, gets nothing for it. And even if you get that endorsement, there's very little evidence that it's a good endorsement to have. For a former president, Trump has a terrible track record of predicting winners.
Yeah.
And in a way, his endorsement is as likely to divide people as it is to coalesce them around you. But when you have that kind of money, no one's going to turn their back on you.
And that is the hope. The hope is that Trump actually gives Democrats a chance to hold on to the House and the Senate by getting into these divisive races. Because, as you pointed out, Ohio is who knows? His endorsement could throw this the other way, either way, and you could end up with somebody else other than Vance or Mandel. In Pennsylvania, you went with Dr. Oz. I think Dr. Oz is a quack. In fact, Dr. Quack is what they call him here, which is interesting. And he's not leading in the polls in many of them. I look at Georgia, where Brian Kemp is leading way ahead of the folks that are also in the race. And, well, Kemp is his target in that race. So it seems that this could be that kind of, the anti-Trump endorsement.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is running against as many Republicans as he is Democrats at this point. And places like Brian Kemp in Georgia, where he started a civil war in Georgia within the Republican Party that has taken a lot of very safe Republican seats and turned them into toss-ups for Democrats. In Ohio, in Pennsylvania, it's remarkable to me how much inner soul searching this Dr. Oz endorsement has caused within the MAGA movement, where you rarely see public strong criticism of Donald Trump or his decision making. And you have his former lieutenants and deputies saying that he was wrong, that this is dumb, it's misguided, it's going to cost them a seat. And they're right. I mean, but in many ways, Dr. Oz is maybe the most Trumpian of the Trump archetypes besides Trump himself. I mean, an inveterate grifter, a guy who might as well bring a confetti cannon around with him to events to try and distract from the fact that he doesn't know what state he's even running in. This appeals to Donald Trump, and Trump will always take what feels good over what's right or what will win. That's just where he's at.
No, I don't disagree with you. And I look at one of his other, underlings down in Georgia, Herschel Walker, and I'm going, the more we learn about Herschel, evidently he owned a business that doesn't exist. Evidently, he graduated top of his class that he didn't graduate from, with honors, I guess. And then he was competing against himself by not blowing his brains out. And I had someone ask me, in a competition of him playing Russian roulette, who lost? And that's a good question. Who would have lost?
And I think someone said something interesting to me about this, which is that lies like this have a shelf life, that you can sort of game people a couple of cycles, but after a while, they're going to start noticing that, like Herschel Walker, for example, can't even debate. He didn't even show up. And his entire campaign rests on keeping him as far away from voters as possible so that no one can ask him questions. He can't say anything stupid. But that has a shelf life, and it doesn't excite voters. And that's a thing that I think Republicans are starting to notice, is that excitement is down in the party. Yeah. That Trump may be able to make a nominee, but he can't make people excited to vote for them. No. And that's a gap Democrats can exploit.
Now, the weird thing is I still think Walker's probably going to win. Has a chance. He has a chance of winning. I know the polls has Raphael Warnock up a little bit right now, but we'll see. And there was a moment where I was going, Herschel Walker will be the dumbest guy in the Senate. But I take no joy in that, because I think he's got an excuse. I think he seriously suffers from CTE. I think all those years of playing football, something going on up there. So even if he wins, I'm still going to look to Tommy Tuberville as the dumbest guy in the Senate.
Well, it really is just a marathon sprint. We have, in a lot of ways on the right, the most qualified field of Republicans ever to vie for the title of worst Republican who has ever worked. I mean, this is a party that has not only completely surrendered even the illusion of policy. I don't know that Madison Cawthorn has introduced a single bill in his entire time in Congress, and Republicans are ranking among the top in terms of absentee lawmakers. They don't even bother to show up and cast votes. So this is what you get, these Herschel Walkers, J.D. Vances, people who can marshal a lot of media without saying anything. And that's terrible for the long-term future of the country and also for the party. I mean, these guys don't win reliably for Republicans.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Max Burns. Max is a Democratic strategist, also a columnist over at the Daily Beast. You can check out his work, thedailybeast.com. We'll get links out on social media. You can grab a hold of that stuff. Now, I want to get your thoughts on the big news of the day. Mike Lee, the constitutional scholar, evidently he was counseling Mark Meadows via text. In fact, I guess over 100 texts going back and forth on why they shouldn't be doing the attempt to overthrow the Electoral College and do some of the things that they were doing. I guess him and Texas Republican Representative Chip Roy. What do we get from all of this? I mean, okay, we've got a bunch of these texts. What are we taking from this?
Yeah, I think this more than anything shows you just how deep the rot is within the Republican Party, how deep this anti-democratic sense has come. Mike Lee's concerns were not that it was morally wrong, that it was abhorrent to the idea of democracy. It was that he didn't think it would work. And he seemed to imply, as others did, talking to the White House on January 6th, that if only they had the numbers, they could get people to go along with it. But because they don't, it's not going to look good to try. And that's not exactly the resounding commitment to the Constitution that they swore an oath to protect. That's pure expediency and saying, circle our wagons, see if we can do this. If we can, great. If not, we'll just pretend like we disavow it.
Is there anything
and they never
new?
Even did that.
Yeah. Is there anything new in this? I mean, look, I think the narrative has already been, and I've been talking about this for a while. This is all stuff we kind of already knew. I mean, this is stuff that's been in other reports. We saw the Eastman memos. We've seen the Cruz stuff. How much more do we need to build this case? How much bigger of a mountain of evidence do we need before you pull the damn trigger and you start actually convicting people?
Yeah, and this is where the January 6th committee comes in. I mean, the fact that these bombshells come out on a regular basis, but almost no one in America is aware of it because we've not had big primetime public hearings. We have not made any sort of sign that it is a priority to prosecute people who are obstructing this investigation. And I mean, let's be honest, we know there's a there. It's written down in texts. It's written down in testimony given under oath by people who were talking about how the president was glued to the television. People were begging him to call them off. That behind the scenes, when there were no cameras, Republicans were deeply aware that what was happening was an attack, that the president controlled it, and that if he didn't exercise some effort to stop it, it would be linked to the Republicans. And they are right on all of those points. The sad thing is they don't have the courage to say that in public unless they are put under oath and made to do so.
Yeah. But here's the thing, and this is where, again, we've had these conversations numerous times, so there's nothing new here. And I said this back, January 7th of last year. The longer this takes, the more we allow this, the farther away from the date we get, the less urgent it becomes, the less horrible it becomes. And I think we're at a point now, I think it's already too late at this moment, because you're seeing the polls out there already that, most Republicans think that, January 6th was a patriotic day. Most Republicans think that there was nothing wrong with it. And it was like any other day of, people just, showing their patriotic, God-fearing duty to go and lobby their member of Congress by defecating on the floor and urinating on desks. Because that's what Republicans do to show their displeasure of government, I guess. And I fear, again, the longer this takes, the more it falls on deaf ears. And again, that sense of urgency that most of us feel, if it was that big of a deal, they'd have moved on it already.
No, you're absolutely right in this sense. And this idea that's important to remember from all we've seen from these documents, from everything that's come out. So many Republicans at Fox News, on Capitol Hill, people within the White House, the president's own children, recognized immediately that this was wrong, and not one of them said to stop until it became clear they were going to lose. When they thought they had a chance at this, everyone was silent and happy.
Yeah.
And as things started to turn, one by one, they fled. This is no less a crime because it failed. It is a crime that these people have not been asked to read these texts out loud into the record on television so that their words in their voice are recorded for history, because this is a monumental crime. And we came very close to a very serious constitutional crisis.
No, I mean, you got Ted Cruz, you got Mike Lee, you got supposedly the best brains of the Republican Party who weren't pushing back, as you pointed out. They were just saying, hey, we might not have enough. They were on board if they could have gotten more support. You're right. Last question I've got for you. Big story this week out of the Q world. I know you've been vaccinated. Are you concerned perhaps that the vaccine you got has some snake blood in it with Satan's DNA? Are you a little concerned about that perhaps? Because I have heard that somehow they got a hold of some Satan DNA. They put Satan's DNA in snake blood, and one of the big companies put the snake blood in the vaccine. And sorry, I can't keep a straight face.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just glad to finally know what I'm putting in my body. And that is apparently Satan and snakes. The Medical College at Trump University, another phenomenal breakthrough for research science. And we thank them for their service.
There you go. Max, as always, great stuff. I appreciate your time and your sense of humor. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you.
Our good friend Max Burns. Make sure you check out his work over at thedailybeast.com. He does some fantastic stuff there. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. You got your snake blood? How about the Satan DNA? And how can we test for that? Because I want to know. I want to know if do I need the Jesus shot? I actually knew a guy who came up with the Jesus shot a number of years ago. Was charging $300 for it in Oklahoma. I know he's dead now, but maybe we could recreate it. It is the holiday season. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day that the American Federation of Teachers was founded at a meeting at the City Club in downtown Chicago. 3 Chicago teachers groups helped to organize the meeting. They were convinced that in order to improve working conditions for teachers, they would need to formally join the labor movement. In 1902, the Chicago Teachers Federation had become the first teachers organization in the nation to join their Central Labor Council. Now they believed it was time to form a national organization. The meeting was also attended by representatives from nearby Gary, Indiana, as well as New York City, Washington, D.C., and Scranton, Pennsylvania. Just a few weeks after the meeting, the American Federation of Teachers had received its charter from the American Federation of Labor. The new union grew quickly. Within 4 months, 174 locals approached membership of 10,000 educators. But then came a backlash from school boards who did not want to negotiate with the new unions. Board members publicly called into question whether it was appropriate for teachers to unionize. The American Federation of Teachers numbers fell to below 5,000. But the union was not swayed from their cause. They renewed their efforts and again began to grow. In the 1950s, some teachers became the targets of anti-communist hysteria. This highlighted the importance of having a union to protect academic freedom. The 1960s was a time of increased teacher actions and strikes. The American Federation of Teachers more than tripled its membership from 60,000 to 200,000 by the end of the decade. Today, the American Federation of Teachers represents more than 1 million members across the nation. While under increasing attacks, teachers are an important force in today's national labor movement.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Linda has an answer for me, sent me an email during the break, of where the Satan DNA came from. She's blaming Monica Lewinsky. Yeah, she said evidently the devil in a blue dress. Remember the movie from the 90s? Evidently it was on the blue dress. It was left on the blue dress. That's how they got the DNA. Okay, if you say so, Linda, thanks so much. I don't agree. And I know what you're inferring. Bill Clinton is not the devil. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line one. Alice, how are you?
I'm good. Well, hey. Now, Rick, come on now. We got to think back. Remember the wacky job doctor from Texas, the one that said, well, remember the one that said that, let's see, the STDs were caused by sex with witches and ghosts and all that. So there you go. They got the devil's DNA from all these incubuses and succubuses that were going around having sex with the witches who were then having sex with regular people. I mean, it's simple. There you go.
Okay, there you go. Now, it was that easy. So there it is.
I mean, all you had to do was think it through a little bit because, they all just sort of run around in the same little circle there, with their Looney Tunes stuff.
Yeah, like Herschel Walker said, think about it.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, like I said, back in the 80s when I was married to the first husband, we used to just shake our heads over Herschel Walker and that was before he got as much brain damage as he did. So I don't think I'm going to take his advice.
There you go. Good stuff, Alice. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
You too. Thanks so much. No, I've been mocking this all week, but the sad reality is this actually has a lot of people buying into it. And this is, again, why we need education. And we need education in the worst way. Oh, boy, do we. More than ever. But I still want to know where some conspiracy theories, where some of these ideas germinate. And Linda, no. I know the devil in a blue dress thing. I get it. Blue dress. I saw how you got there. I got that. But yeah, all right. But back to what we were talking about with Max. The fact that it's taken so long to get people under oath. The fact that these hearings have, I'm of the mindset we should be seeing Stephen Miller, for instance, today, who I thought was kind of an American version of our Nazi. While he was in the Trump administration. This guy was horrible. This guy was terrible. His 8 hours should have been on C-SPAN. Yesterday, he was in an 8-hour hearing. Congress asked him questions for 8 hours. I would have loved to have seen that. I would have loved to see what the investigators had to say. No, I know, but Rick, he won't be forthcoming. He's not going to be forthcoming anyway. These people are going to do everything in their power to spin, to deflect, to project, to do everything they can do to make it look like they didn't do anything wrong. And yet, the reality, we saw what happened January 6th. And the right-wing spin machine, the chaos merchants, they have already spun this. I know people who, they don't think anything bad happened on January 6th. Nothing. It was just a good old-fashioned American summer. It was a January day. It was a picnic kind of day. It was a family day. It was the end of an era in this country's history. That thing that made us exceptional. That peaceful transfer of power. Historic. That they were all in on. The people who ran around with their pocket constitutions, lecturing us on how much they loved the Constitution. These people were willing to take a giant dump on it and shred it in public. And then lecture us. Crazy stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or make sure you grab the podcast. I'll never miss a moment of the program. You can grab that at the website, thericksmithshow.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around.
I got nowhere to go now. I got no house, I got no nothing.
Catastrophic rains and floods kill hundreds in South Africa.
I'm here today because homegrown biofuels have a role to play right now.
Biden waives summer ban on ethanol to combat high gas prices. Plus, the climate crisis is supercharging hurricane rainfall.
All of those super stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You will never hear a Republican who complains about how much we have to pay for gasoline ever complain about Jared Kushner getting $2 billion in oil profit money from Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's because they don't actually care about gas prices, and they're jealous of Jared. Now, what was that whole thing about $10,000 and Hunter Biden again? This is your Green News Report.
$2 billion in oil profit money from Saudi Arabia.
Okay, Desi Doyen, the climate crisis devastation continues, doesn't it?
Yes, unfortunately it does. Rescue and evacuation operations are underway in Durban, South Africa, after days of torrential rains and floods washed away roads and bridges and destroyed homes and vital infrastructure, killing at least 300 people. Oh. This latest weather disaster comes not long after other parts of southern Africa were devastated by 5 powerful tropical storms in just 6 weeks earlier this year. In a new study out this week, scientists from the World Weather Attribution Project, which analyzes the influence of climate change on extreme weather events, confirmed that climate change made those storms more intense and damaging.
Gosh, I wish we had more studies on all of this.
Climate change also made the record-breaking 2020 Atlantic hurricane season even worse. A new study in Nature Communications finds clear evidence that ocean warming is driving Atlantic hurricanes to produce more rainfall and to become more intense. This was the first study to look at an entire hurricane season rather than just single storms. The researchers found that during the entire record season of 30 named storms, human-caused global warming supercharged hourly rainfall rates in tropical storms and hurricanes by as much as 11%. One researcher warned, quote, "This isn't an end-of-the-century thing that we have to worry about. We actually have to prepare our coastlines for the changes in these storms now."
What, because climate change is happening right now?
Yes, that's exactly what he means. In other news, the spike in U.S. gasoline prices and other fossil fuel commodities, caused in part by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, are a key reason that domestic inflation is rising. To help lower gas prices, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency this week issued a temporary waiver to the Clean Air Act to allow gasoline known as E15, which is blended with 15% ethanol made from corn, to be sold in summer months to increase supply. The administration estimates that will bring down gas prices by about 10 cents per gallon where it is sold. Here's President Biden at an ethanol plant in Iowa.
Your family budget, your ability to fill up your tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide half a world away.
Now, it's a win for farm state lawmakers, but the temporary waiver is controversial because burning E15 gas in summer months increases polluting smog, and it could encourage more fossil fuel consumption.
You know what else would help?
What?
Don't we have war profiteering laws on the books anymore? Sure would like to see some of those brought against big oil.
Well, high gas prices have political impacts for congressional Democrats who warn that if Republicans win control of Congress in the November midterm elections, that will effectively mean the end of U.S. climate policy.
Yeah, and maybe the end of democracy, but that's a whole different story.
Another major energy company is moving to exit Russia to stop funding the war on Ukraine.
Rexit?
Bloomberg News reports that Vitol Group, the world's largest independent oil trader, will stop trading Russian crude oil and products as its existing contracts expire by the end of this year and will not enter into any new transactions with Russia.
Good.
Some good news. Japanese car maker Honda announced this week it will try to catch up to other global car makers customers by pouring $40 billion into electrifying its lineup with the target of launching 30 EV models globally by 2030. And finally, the U.S. has hit a wind energy milestone. In the first week of April, wind power was the second largest source of electricity in the United States for the first time ever.
Nice.
That's according to the Federal Energy Information Administration. Wind energy edged out electricity generated by nuclear and coal in the nation's electricity mix, but still trailed behind natural gas.
I didn't even know we had a Federal Energy Information Administration.
And now you know.
For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we keep hearing about inflation. We keep hearing about how the Republicans are beating us over the head with it, especially Joe Biden, because everything is Joe Biden's fault. Everything. You know, all that nonsense that's going on in Texas with that idiot governor they got down there who's stopping every single truck to make sure that the lights work. And thus making sure that all of our produce doesn't get to market and rots on the back of those trucks sitting on the bridge, you know, so that the price of produce doubles over the next couple of months. And then thus inflation goes up, you know, that kind of nice stuff. You know, Joe Biden did that. Get ready for it. And we'll have cute little stickers. It'll be so much fun. The problem is it doesn't look like Democrats are doing enough to fight back over this. And I love the fact that in Illinois, at least, for our listeners on WCPT there in Chicago, AM 820, your governor is actually doing something. They put out their idea for their fiscal year 2023, their balanced budget plan. They want to eliminate the grocery tax for the year. That's going to help working families. They want to double the property tax rebate. They want to put some direct checks into the pockets of working families. They're going to do some deliveries of back-to-school tax relief for families and teachers. They're going to freeze the motor fuel tax for the next 6 months, permanently expand the earned income tax credit. They're saying about $1.8 billion in tax relief. You're going, hey, you know, it's a start. Where is it targeted? Not to the J.B. Pritzkers of the world, not to the rich guys, not to the Bloombergs, not to the people who are paying a paltry 3.4 or 4.1% tax like we talked about, but to you and me, to average, everyday working people. This is the stuff we need to be doing, helping people in this moment, and then punishing those at the top, punishing those folks who are screwing us. And here to talk about how we do that, I've asked Hal Singer to come talk with us. Hal is the managing director of Econ One. They're a group out of New York who does just this kind of stuff, which is why we've got him. Hal, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I couldn't think of a better way to spend a Friday evening.
Okay then. Walk me through it, because I'm looking at the fact that we're at a moment where inflation's at a 40-year high, yet corporate profits at a 50-year high. I don't know. Seems like there's... I know causation doesn't mean effect, and I'm told that stuff, but it seems convenient that inflation's really high, corporate profits are really high. There seems like there's some common ground there.
Yeah, so the story's a little complicated, so just kind of hold on for 1 second. Hopefully I'll get you there. But in my version of events is that the corporations are using a small bout of inflation, or at least in 2021, use a small bout of inflation as a pretext for massive price hikes that they could attribute to inflation. And what we see instead, as you just noted, is that profits and profit margins are soaring, right? That is, even to the extent costs are going up, they're not just passing on costs. If they just merely passed on their costs, right, the profit margins wouldn't go up. In fact, in percentage terms, the profit margins would go down. They're taking these cost increases and they're using them as a pretext, right, to jack up price even higher. And so in economic terms, what I'm suggesting is that firms in concentrated industries generally, right, have a hard time coordinating their prices. It's hard to form a cartel. But what inflation does, it facilitates the formation of a price fixing agreement. In particular, what I mean is that inflation does two things. It primes your customers to expect and be ready and tolerate a price increase that they otherwise would normally reject. And number two, it gives firms in the industry a focal point to fixate on and say, you know what, if that's the target, we should go there too, or we could even go higher and see how people react. So that to me is the diagnosis of what's going on. It's simple. It's coordinated pricing in concentrated industries. And the reason why they can do it is because we've allowed our industries to consolidate like crazy over the last 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with you. And I've been calling for, where's my Teddy Roosevelt? We need a trust buster to start breaking up some of these behemoths because there's no competition. And look, I said from the beginning, when the I word was first being thrown around, I'm going, no, what this is good old-fashioned American greed, good old-fashioned American opportunism. Corporate America sees an opportunity and takes advantage of it. And I look at the oil industry. There was a shareholders call not too long ago where they were talking about not increasing production because they like the prices high so they can return some money to their shareholders. And you go, hold on, I thought, high demand, you increase production to meet demand. No, we're going to not increase demand. We're not going to increase production. We're going to keep prices high artificially by screwing with the supply and demand curve because we can.
Yeah, and you mentioned something very important in that, and I don't know if you do this on purpose, but there's a key thing. It's what they're saying on the airwaves, what they're saying on the earnings calls, right? These guys are not just saying that we raised prices last quarter, right, and we made profits from it. They're actually saying that we think we have lasting pricing power, and we have intentions of raising our prices in the future. What they're doing is they're communicating to all of their rivals, right, their future pricing intentions, right? And this kind of conduct is condemned under the DOJ and FTC collaboration guidelines. But they get away with it because the law turns out to be a bit soft. The antitrust law turns out to be a bit soft on prosecuting a price fixing cartel in the absence of a smoking gun evidence of an agreement. Can I just regale you with one quick case that I was involved in to kind of make this a kind of a teaching point? I was involved in a case called INRI bag fee antitrust that was against Delta and AirTran. You've probably heard of them. Delta was the last legacy airline to impose the first bag fee. And why? Because it competed head to head against AirTran in the hub of Atlanta. Delta hired brilliant economists to figure out that if they went first with their own bag fee, there'd be a giant sucking sound as customers would move over to AirTran. So AirTran's CEO solved the problem. He went on an earnings call and he said, AirTran would never impose a first bag fee on our own, but if Delta were to go first, we would follow with certainty, right? So Delta goes back and reruns their numbers and decides, lo and behold, it now makes sense to impose the bag fee. They go a few days later, AirTran follows, and the rest is history. They were pursued in private litigation. As disclosure, I was the expert against them. And the judge decided on summary judgment that we didn't have enough to prove a price-fixing conspiracy, right? And so when I hear these sorry to regale you with that, but when I hear these CEOs like boasting about their intentions to raise price in the future, I can't help as an economist thinking to myself, they found a soft spot in the law and they're going to exploit it. And until someone comes and cracks down on them, they are literally coordinating their future prices right before our eyes.
Yeah. Now I said right when all the stuff was going on in Ukraine, and you can tell me I'm wrong, and you can tell me I've gone too far, and I'm off my rocker, and I may be, and I think I probably am. But I said at the beginning, I go, during this time of crisis with what's going on in Ukraine, the oil companies can't be trusted to not gouge our eyes out in this moment of crisis for this short period of time. We're going to nationalize the oil companies, or we're going to have massive windfall profits. However, we've got to do this, but they can't be trusted to not gouge us during a time of war because they've shown us for so long that, well, they're going to gouge our eyes out. And I think the president had to be really forceful, and he didn't. And no president would be in our lifetime. I think in this moment, you've got to be much like FDR was and really go after these people in a way that, well, nobody in my lifetime has.
Right. The last time it happened, Paul Krugman had this in an op-ed, but I think President Kennedy in the 60s admonished it could have been the steel industry. At a time they did parallel price hikes, and he basically went after them and insinuated they were un-American, and the price hikes were retracted shortly thereafter. Yeah, it would be a nice fresh dose of vigor if we could see that from President Biden.
Now, I understand in New York there's some movement of figuring out how to do this, at least in New York, how to crack down on corporate consolidation and price gouging. What are they doing in New York?
Well, New York is actually considering just rewriting their antitrust laws, like basically coming up with brand new standards, new burdens of proof, modeling it a bit after what is used in the European Commission, to make it basically a little harder for defendants to get away with monopolizing the industry and engaging in price fixing conspiracies, also in harming labor. All of these things are loopholes under the current regime. And the New York law, if it were to become law, would create a very nice venue for new cases to be brought.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Hal Singer. Hal's a managing director over at Econ One. You want to check out the work that he does, halsinger.wordpress.com. We'll get links out on social media so you can check out his writings. I'm looking at this moment, and the legislation that we're talking about is 21st Century Antitrust Act there in New York. This kind of stuff I hope could happen across the country. I know right now in this day, Republican legislators aren't going to take this on, but this sounds like something that old school Republicans would have, because I know my old school conservatives used to be, smaller government, competition in the marketplace, not believing in monopolies. At least I want to believe they used to believe in this stuff, but or am I missing something? I mean,
I think you're right. There's a big swath of the Republican Party that does believe in it. The problem is that there's an equally big kind of libertarian strand, as expressed by the Chamber of Commerce folks, who are just hostile to antitrust enforcement. And so, I don't know how to break through in that logjam and get the voices, potentially the majority of Republicans, heard. But so long as the chamber kind of speaks for the Republican Party, they're going after Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor of the FTC and DOJ, respectively, in all their attempts to pursue businesses, in particular under these new monopsony theories, that is labor harm theories, which is something that had been ignored for prior administrations. And only recently under the Biden administration, you're seeing cases being brought to try to protect labor from monopsony, that is the exercise of buying power by firms who are too big in the employment space.
And again, this is one of those situations where I love that word, because it's a word that I think every working person should know. It's the ability of corporate America to crush your wages and keep you working for less than what the quote unquote market wage should be. And I always love that term, because nobody knows what the heck a market wage is, because the market is created by those folks at the top, isn't it?
It is, and unfortunately, it's hard to know what it is. But we're coming up with good ways to figure out whether or not workers are being exploited, and we also are coming up with ways to figure out, how to prove that the restraints that a company employs is causing wages to be lower. I'm involved in a few cases, but unfortunately, they're still brewing. We're awaiting a big decision in one, so I can't talk about it too much. But trust me when I say that there are a lot of pretty big monopsony cases that are coming down the pike right now, and could change the nature of antitrust law depending on how they go.
Well, I'm excited to hear about that. I'd love to hear more about it. So let me ask you kind of last line of questioning then, because, I'm looking at the president and I'm going, I want you to do something. There's an election. Maybe he's heard of it coming up fairly soon down the road. Inflation is the number one issue you ask any voter right now, because we're being inundated by news at every turn. Every time you flip on any news station, it's all about inflation's killing us. And, I'm hammered with experts who want to tell me how bad it is. Nobody's telling me how we fix it. Nobody's telling me, hey, this is what, Joe Biden needs to do to make it better. This is what Democrats should be doing. I went through a couple of things that Pritzker's trying in Illinois. What do you think, Hal? What should Democratic governors doing? What should the president be doing?
Let me give you behind door number A, door number B, and they're not mutually exclusive. You can take them both if you like, okay? But they're both kind of in the same spirit. The first is we go back to these cases that are very difficult for plaintiffs to prevail in. These are these price fixing cases where you don't have smoking gun evidence of the price fixing agreement, but you do have things like parallel price hikes, concentrated industry, and the sharing of competitively sensitive information. So like going back to my Delta Airtran example, you got the CEO of one company saying in a news conference, an investor conference earnings call, I would copy him if he goes first, right? What we need to do is, if it's impossible to prove this, then once these certain fact patterns are established by the plaintiff or by the government, the burden ought to shift over to the defendant to have to prove that what happened really was the result of their own kind of what we call it unilateral interest. They weren't doing it in cahoots or in coordination with their rivals, right? That is, we'd flip the burden over the defendants, and we think we'd win more of these edge cases. And in addition, in those cases, I think that if you were an executive in a company that is found guilty of violating the price fixing laws, right, you ought to be barred from ever working in that industry again. Right. What we want to do is we want the executives who like are feeling their oats and bragging about their pricing power to the streets. We want them to think twice and kind of be a little more humble when they take to the airwaves, right? Instead of trying to blatantly kind of one, rub it in our face, and two, communicate to their rivals that they are going to raise prices in the future. Now that's kind of behind door number A. Behind door number B, I think that as soon as we observe an unusual parallel price hike in an industry, right, that is concentrated, we ought to have automatic investigations launched by the Federal Trade Commission, right? And so and I hate to pick on these guys, but it's just so easy. The meatpacking industry raised their prices on the order of 30% in 2021, something outrageous, okay? And the meatpacking industry is highly concentrated. About 4 firms control, the majority of sales in the industry. I feel like when we observe something that's crazy like that, a 30% price hike in a year, right, that cannot be explained by cost variables, by movements in cost, right, all happen at the same time in a concentrated industry, then boom, the automatic investigation begins. That doesn't mean you're going to jail. It just means that you're going to be put on notice that the FTC is going to start snooping around and trying to figure out what it is that get to the bottom of the story about why these prices went up so high. I feel again that people can raise prices with impunity because they can. There are no consequences right now, right? No one calls you, right? No matter how obscene the price increase is, no matter how it's happening endemic throughout your industry, and even if it's not justified by rising costs. So I feel like we need a stick, right? We need something to stop these people from behaving. I mean, like animals. I don't know how to say it. Kennedy said un-American, but I think particularly during a pandemic or coming out of a pandemic, when you're gouging your customers this way, I mean, it's sick. I don't know. It's hard to take just sitting there watching.
Yeah, but I had Andy Puzder, the former CEO of Carl's Jr. and the failed attempted Secretary of Labor under Trump, tell me no. This is all because Biden juiced the economy, gave that $1,400 and people spend it. That's the reason. It's demand, Hal.
Let me tell you, I got two responses to that. And this one, the first one's not original. It comes from some analysis that Krugman did, but it turns out the aggregate demand did not shift out by virtue of the stimulus. Yes, the stimulus shifted the demand out, but in the absence of the stimulus, the demand would have contracted, right? Because people were locked in their homes. And so on net, aggregate demand did not shift out by much. What happened instead was the composition of demand change. We went from an economy that demanded mostly services to one that demanded physical things. And we didn't have the supply infrastructure in place to handle that, at least initially. And that's what gave rise to this first initial modest bout of inflation. So I think most economists, there's a Federal Reserve study too that rejects the idea that the stimulus pushed out demand so much that we couldn't take it. But I want to tell you one other finding too. It's important. I neglected to say it. I found in my testimony that I just submitted last week to Congress, I had the pleasure of being questioned by AOC on the root causes of inflation. It was pretty cool. And what I found was that all things equal, that industries in 2021 that were most concentrated tended to experience the highest price increases, right? So meatpacking, high concentrated industry, high price increases. And if you just plot the dots, concentration against price hikes in 2021, you'll see, a positive relationship. And so I'd say that data supports my theory that it's concentration, making an industry susceptible to coordination, where inflation kind of serves as that facilitating device. That's my theory. These alternative theories that are being peddled out here, demand is too high, it wouldn't explain the data that I see. And the other kind of theory that Larry Summers is peddling is that like wage demands, the labor market's too tight, workers are making ridiculous wage demands, and that's causing firms to defensively raise prices to accommodate these wage increases. It turns out there's a wonderful study that refutes that by EPI, Josh Bivens, the economist, and he found he tried to correlate wage increases in an industry in 2021 with price increases in the industry, and it just looks like a cloud of dust. There's no relationship whatsoever. And if Summers and their ilk, I call them the corporate apologists, were correct, you would expect to see that the industries with the highest wage hikes in 2021 would also be the ones with the highest price increases. But yet there's no relationship whatsoever. So we have all these vying theories. Biden shifted out demand too much. Its workers are to blame. I'm offering another one, that we've allowed industries to become too damn concentrated. I hope I can say that at 10:25. And in those industries, we see these outrageous price hikes. And I think it's facilitated by inflation, and it's exacerbated by the ability of these firms to communicate their future pricing intentions through the airwaves on investor earnings calls.
That is a great theory, and one I'm going to steal from you, Hal.
Take it and run with it.
Good stuff. Hal, I appreciate you taking some time for us. I hope you'll come back and share some more with us down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Hal Singer, Managing Director at Econ One. Definitely going to get him back. I want to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Right back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. No, I love that guy. He is, that right there, the answer. The fact of the matter is the money that Biden was able to get into people's pockets helped keep the economy from collapsing, but didn't do what the puzzlers and the right-wing spin masters are trying to say. No, did not expand things to so far that it blew a hole in everything. Sorry, not buying. That's not how it worked. But again, you've got these folks who, the chaos merchants who are going to tell you whatever they can spin their way. And this is the frustrating part of the world that we're in, because you turn on right-wing blather and they're all on message. Oh, the inflation's all Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. And they got cute little stickers. They got stickers. And of course, who doesn't love stickers? And of course, the jingoism that goes with it. And of course, if you believe already that Joe Biden's the Antichrist who gave you Satan's blood and snake venom, of course, it fits right in. But reality is like, as I said from the very start, good old-fashioned greed and opportunism. That's what we're living through. These greedy corporations saw an opportunity to rob us blind again. and they done did took it. Now it's up to us. It's up to us. Do something about it. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Grab the podcast. Make sure you do that. Download that. Helps us in a number of ways. Share it with your friends. Have them download as well. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day that the American Federation of Teachers was founded at a meeting at the City Club in downtown Chicago. 3 Chicago teachers groups helped to organize the meeting. They were convinced that in order to improve working conditions for teachers, they would need to formally join the labor movement. In 1902, the Chicago Teachers Federation had become the first teachers organization in the nation to join their Central Labor Council. Now they believed it was time to form a national organization. The meeting was also attended by representatives from nearby Gary, Indiana, as well as New York City, Washington, D.C., and Scranton, Pennsylvania. Just a few weeks after the meeting, the American Federation of Teachers had received its charter from the American Federation of Labor. The new union grew quickly. Within 4 months, 174 locals approached membership of 10,000 educators. But then came a backlash from school boards who did not want to negotiate with the new unions. Board members publicly called into question whether it was appropriate for teachers to unionize. The American Federation of Teachers numbers fell to below 5,000. But the union was not swayed from their cause. They renewed their efforts and again began to grow. In the 1950s, some teachers became the targets of anti-communist hysteria. This highlighted the importance of having a union to protect academic freedom. The 1960s was a time of increased teacher actions and strikes. The American Federation of Teachers more than tripled its membership from 60,000 to 200,000 by the end of the decade. Today, the American Federation of Teachers represents more than 1 million members across the nation. While under increasing attacks, teachers are an important force in today's national labor movement.
I think we can now say the obvious. The Republican Party has gone bull-goose bonkers. Its leaders have turned the once proud GOP brand into an unprincipled gaggle of corporate profiteers, hate-mongers, and screwball conspiracy theorists. They're so far out that the Hubble telescope couldn't find them. But where is my Democratic Party? Here's a transformative opportunity to forge a solid political coalition, a multiracial, urban-rural, farm-labor alliance based on fundamental principles and programs of fairness and opportunity for all. Isn't that what the party says it stands for? This is the prime time to demonstrate it, to reach out and unite ordinary Americans behind a national agenda of lasting progressive change. It's not like the party elders would have to start from scratch, for an energized, feisty movement of grassroots battlers against corporate greed and government injustice is already organizing, winning, and growing popular support all across the country. But rather than welcoming and building on the exciting advances of these popular movements, the party's old-line insider clique of big funders, consultants, and corporate politicos passively assume that the GOP's goofiness and nastiness will turn off enough voters that Democrats can win by default. Meanwhile, the establishment insists that Democrats only push modest incremental reforms so as not to offend corporate funders or spook moderate Republicans. Hello, brilliant strategists. A primary function of the Democratic Party is to offend the corporate powers. Also, there are only about 6 moderate Republicans left in America, so appeasing them is not a big win, especially when it costs you the support of grassroots voters eager for a politics bold enough and big enough to end business-as-usual economics. This is Jim Hightower saying, as our own history teaches, it takes intentional gutsiness to create a politics that matters. Republicans won't do that. Will Democrats? The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Tuesday this week, You had Secretary Marty Walsh, Department of Labor. You had Kamala Harris, Vice President. You had a lot of labor leaders from across the state of Pennsylvania converging in Philadelphia at the Sheet Metal Workers Union Hall, Sheet Metal Workers 19, at their training facility. Come together, roll out this new program, this national, they call it a national emphasis program. And this is something that I've talked about for a long time. I don't know that there's been enough paid attention to heat exposure, enough paid attention to heat illness. And it's not something we've often talked about. And since we're not going to do anything about climate change, clearly, since there doesn't seem to be much of an interest in saving the planet, maybe we should be talking about how we save workers if we're going to do nothing about saving the temperatures and begin to, well, deal with reality. It's going to get hotter. And George Will, famously said, well, it's summertime. Yeah, but it's getting progressively worse. And whether you're a construction worker, in Texas, whether you're a warehouse worker here in Pennsylvania, whether you're working on a farm in California, wherever, whether you're working on a pipeline somewhere in Alaska, extreme weather conditions are got to be something that have to be looked at. Now, they're talking about extreme heat. I think the other end of the spectrum, probably going to have to worry about this too. I think weather events, something we're going to have to look at, but they were talking about extreme heat, how we're going to protect people from getting sick, from being injured, from dying. And good for them. As they pointed out, since the 90s, heat-related deaths on the job have more than doubled. And you go, why is that? Well, a bunch of reasons. We have slashed the budgets of OSHA. We've cut back on worker protections. There's been an all-out assault on labor unions and workers being able to use organizations to protect themselves, that front and center. So for me, I look at this, and this is an opportunity to go, okay, we're going to finally put some parameters in place. I'll start talking about some guidelines so that folks can help themselves, hold employers accountable. After all, you've got a lot of these giant warehouses going up now. People go, but Rick, those are air conditioned. Those are Club Med compared to the way they used to be. Not so fast. It's like what we like to believe, but not so fast. And as I said, if we're going to do nothing about the climate, if we're going to do nothing about dealing with our climate issues, worker issues have got to be front and center. And this is a good start. And I give them credit for highlighting this. Did this get any real attention? No. Because truth be told, it doesn't affect the right people. These are working class folks. These are people like you and me. These are people who get up every day, go to work, take a shower at the end of the day. These are people with calluses on their hands. Not people that get thought about very often. And these are the people of the Biden administration. I give them credit. I give them credit for coming out and saying, this is important. Now, injuries like this are preventable. Deaths due to overexposure to heat, preventable. And the weird thing is some of it is as simple as ensuring that there's water nearby. As simple as maybe having a spot where the workspaces are shaded. Just simple stuff. But that hurts the bottom line. Can't have that. So we'll see what happens. Again, when these programs come out, I know what happens administration to administration. Every time a Democrat comes in, you get some good policies that come out. They start implementing them, and then in comes Trump. And Trump basically wiped everything out. Deregulating. This is a job killer. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for it because this is one of those onerous regulations on business. It's a job killer. And what we've seen, the statistic, people dying of heat-related illnesses from the 90s have doubled. I don't hear people screaming about, well, lack of regulations is a people killer. No, they don't care about that because people can be replaced. You can be replaced. And I think that's the message of the day. Ultimately, and this is where working people have to internalize this stuff. In the big scheme of things, you're simply just a number on a ledger. You're a negative number on a ledger that can easily be replaced. You don't matter. And I know we love to think that we're so important. We have this bloated ego of ourselves that the company can't exist without us. No, they can move on quite well, thank you very much. And in fact, if they could automate and get rid of us entirely, they most certainly would. Which is why, there was a study done, and I've talked about this. What is it? Over half the jobs we currently do at some point down the road in the next 20 years will eventually be automated, will eventually be done by machines or computers or robotics, AI, something. And people are freaking out. And I'm going, I wish we had an economy that would go, that's a great idea. That's welcoming. It's going to increase productivity. It's going to make us all better. It's going to make us all better off. And we're going to all be able to share the fruits of this mass productivity gain. Problem, that's not how our economy works. It is not anywhere close to how the American economy works. In fact, how the American economy works is the guy who figures out how to throw everybody out of jobs, he's the one who wins, collects all the money, hoards all the money, and then complains that he pays too much in taxes. And everyone else, welfare line, unemployment. And then they get to be the butt of all the jokes. You don't pay any federal taxes. Who do you think you are? I mean, this is the world we're in. And I have a different vision, a different view of what we could be. Look, I want productivity gains, massive ones. I want us to do better. But I want all of us to share in those gains. And I know my conservative friends are going to go, oh, you're talking socialism. And no, I'm talking dulling the razor edge of capitalism that cuts, that destroys, that harms, and raise up the part of it that does well. Take the best parts of all economic theory, of all economic method, and use them to make us all better off. But no, we can't do that because the one with all the money and the power wants to keep all the money and power. And then buys a bunch of people to make sure that they're insulated from having to pay anything else. Again, if we had a functional system, a generation of kids wouldn't be saddled with massive student loan debt. If we had a functional system, people could pursue their vocational wants, their vocational passions, without having to worry, am I going to put my family's health at risk because I can't afford to venture out and do something that I want to do, that I'm passionate about, that I feel a calling for. But I'm going to risk not getting health insurance, retirement security, any of the other things. Because there's no safety net there. There's nothing there. And health security and retirement security, I'm sorry, that shouldn't be left to employers. Employers are not in the business of providing that stuff. They're in the business of cheating you out of that stuff. They're in the business of getting you to come do what they need you to do at the lowest possible price so that they can maximize their profits, maximize shareholder value and wealth, and not share with you. That's the gig. And the sooner we wake up to that reality, we hear that we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to anytime we hear that dreaded S word to start foaming. And then when they throw terms out like, market economy and, the market driven wages and competition, okay, yeah. Without thinking that the reason wages keep going down and prices keep going up is because, the people at the top have gone, hey, we're going to raise prices. And why do costs keep going up? Because people keep charging each other more. Because they can. And we keep falling for it. This is the weird world in which we find ourselves. And for me, there's a lot that we can be doing. There's a lot of transfers that we could be making. There's a lot of policy we could be pushing. I'm a works guy. I believe every person should have a passion, something that they want to get up and do every day, something that they're driven by. And look, I know people who go into work in a factory. That's their thing. They love taking a piece of raw material and turning it into something. They love working in a warehouse. They love sorting. And I know people like this. That is they love doing what they're doing. And we want to encourage that. We want people to do that stuff. But we want them to be able to make a living at it. But I also know people who want to pursue other venues. They want to do all kinds of things. And we should encourage that as well. But we don't have that safety net. Because, well, and I remember the whole argument around why we can't have Medicare for all. I was having this conversation with my daughter today, and the concept of American exceptionalism came up. And she's writing a paper in school, and it's about why don't Americans think anywhere else is better, and why do they think that other countries are backwards, and the reality is most people don't travel abroad, don't know. But have this view that we're exceptional, we're number one, that, I know people who believe that we're number one in everything. We're number one in healthcare, we're number one in education, we're number one in infant birth rates. You go down the list, whatever you can imagine, because we're American, thump the chest, we're number one. When the reality is, not even close. And, we were having this conversation about American exceptionalism and how, we kind of view ourselves. And as I was going through this and we were talking about it, I'm going, healthcare is one of those things that we're told the best system we can have is this employer-based system, and everybody else has got it backwards. And yet you go around the world and you talk to people in other countries. We met a couple in Florida on vacation who was from Montreal, Canada. And the guy told me, look, you have a backward system. We love our health care. We love what we get. Tommy Douglas, the person who brought national health care, is a national treasure, hero. He went through this whole thing. I knew people from Germany who, same thing. They've got health care. And are there problems? Yeah, there are always problems with any system, but nowhere near ours. Because you don't lose a whole segment of the population. You don't lose a whole bunch of people who die 10 years earlier than everyone else because, well, they don't get access. You don't have infant mortality rates that are off the charts in the developed world when you look at income. These are things that don't happen in other countries, and we don't talk about those. And why? It's because we're exceptional. Because, well, thump the chest, we're number one. And it's because we don't think about anywhere else. We don't look anywhere else. And the part of it is because we've deluded ourselves. And as we were having this conversation, she goes, yeah, I kind of understand that. And she was then giving me examples of the same kind of thinking. And kind of made me proud. Kind of made me go, I have hope. I have hope for future generations. My daughter might get it. And I'm hoping the rest of us do. I'm hoping at some point the rest of us wake up to the reality that, what they're selling us, it ain't working. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about privatization of Medicare and the VA. There's a push to that. Somebody sent me an email here recently that has gotten me thinking, and I'm going to spend a little time over the next couple of weeks talking about, I'm trying to find some experts to come in and share some thoughts on privatization of Medicare and Medicaid and all of that, and some of the damage that's been done by George W. Bush, Trump, some of the privatization schemes that haven't worked out as well. Has any of them, have they ever? But I'm going to spend a little time on that on the other side. Going to take a quick break. If you missed any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast there at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your podcast. Also love to hear your thoughts. If you want to weigh in, make sure you send me an email, rick@thericksmithshow.com. LaborHistoryIn2.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the go. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. It was opening day of a truly new baseball season. 14,000 black baseball fans had come to Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, making up more than half of the crowd. They let out an exuberant cheer as Jackie Robinson, the first ball player to break the color barrier, ran onto the field. But do you know what led to that historic moment? For years, black community leaders and writers at black newspapers had led the call demanding baseball's integration. The New York Trade Union Athletic Association also joined the fight. The TUAA organized sports programs for 300,000 union members. In 1940, they launched the Committee to End Jim Crow Baseball. That July, they hosted a labor sports carnival at the New York World's Fair. The theme for the event was Ending Jim Crow Baseball. Racially integrated teams played a series of baseball games. The committee collected more than 10,000 signatures to end baseball's long system of segregation. Civil rights and union leaders held pickets at baseball stadiums in New York and Chicago, where they collected more than 1 million signatures. This grassroots community organizing brought attention to the racial barrier erected around America's pastime. Finally, their efforts paid off when the part owner and general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, signed Jackie Robinson to play for the Dodgers. Robinson often faced discrimination from other teams and fans during his career. But despite this harassment, he was named Rookie of the Year in 1947, National League MVP in 1949, and was named to the All-Star team 6 times. And so, each year on this day, Major League Baseball celebrates Jackie Robinson Day. Players wear the number 42 in honor of Jackie Robinson. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to LaborHistoryIn2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So, like I said, I got this long email talking about what is going on with, a whole bunch of things on the healthcare world. Because understand what we do with healthcare. The poorest people of the country, they get Medicaid. We put, in fact, half of the children born in this country are born with Medicaid. So we take the poor people, we get them health insurance, and it's not bad. It actually is pretty good from the people that I know who have had it. They do okay. Our seniors, that's the safety net. If you're seniors who are indigent, that's how we deal with long-term health care. If you're in a nursing home, that's how we usually pay for that. But usually they take everything you've got at the end of it, and you're penniless at that. If you're a working age person, well, if you don't have employer-based health care, kind of screwed unless you're going to get the employee free choice. The Affordable Care Act, which is the dreaded Obamacare, which is okay. It's something, unless you have, some ailments that are going to be yearly, because the deductibles are can be pretty high. I know people who've been hit with, $4,000 a year, and I don't know how many people can keep paying the premiums and the deductibles and all of this. So it can be a little costly, but still better than nothing. And our seniors, we put our seniors on Medicare. So everyone over 65 is covered, and that's a great thing. And they get to buy a supplemental plan that picks up other things. But what we did with Medicare is we go, hold on. We're gonna have a privatized version. And thank you, George W. Bush, for this. Because what we know about the Medicare Advantage plan is we know it costs billions more than it should. Because, whenever there's a profit motive involved, whenever corporate America gets their lecherous little claws into something, they got to suck as much out of it as they can. When they get their snout in the trough, they got to get as much as they can. And, as this person who sent me this email pointed out, when HHS looked at Health and Human Services looked at it, they're talking like $6 billion a year in excess costs, upcharging, double billing, the kind of stuff that's questionable, on the borderline of That sounds almost fraudulent. Kind of like, sounds shady to me. And in fact, he pointed out a program that I had suggested years ago, and I'm so thrilled that someone actually acted on it. In Ohio, they have a program where they have someone come, a couple of days a week for a couple of hours to be with seniors in their home, and just to come talk, maybe to do some light cleaning, maybe some run some errands, just to be a person there to interact with. But then, as this person points out, they train these people to, once you get in there, start suggesting that they, complain about other things that may not be quite right, start looking for other ailments, start getting them on the record so that they can diagnose them with multiple other problems. The more diagnoses you can get, the more problems you can get on paper, the more you can charge, the more you can rake in. Profit. Corporate America doing what they do, sucking you dry. And I go, this starts off as such a great program, starts off with the right intentions, starts off with, doing the good work, and then takes that ugly turn. Are we surprised? No, of course not. Because all of these privatized schemes always come down to who's lining their pockets, how much money they can stuff into their pockets, and to whose benefit. Also, we find out that some of these programs, and again, this is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, when they did an audit, they find that the Advantage plan, the people who get that have a much higher rate of being denied services, turned away, and denied service. And you go, well, wait a second. I thought that wasn't supposed to happen. Oh, well, it's not on the flow chart. And this is the thing that gets me. And this is where healthcare shouldn't be a for-profit model, because you get one shot at it. You don't get a second chance when you make a mistake. You deny someone the care that they need, the treatment that they may need. And an extra 2-3 months goes down the road as you're fighting and appealing. Maybe a year goes by as you're appealing this stuff. Things get worse. And you don't get that time back to go, oh, okay, let's go back. Let's reset to go and fight this stuff. No, you don't get that good fortune back. And you're that much further down the road, that much sicker. And, you died. Better luck next time. We'll do better in the future. And you go, no. See, this isn't how this is supposed to work. Medicare was supposed to be there for our seniors when they need it. And I believe healthcare should be there when we need it. When you're sick, you get the care you need. When you need it. I still remember a movie. It's been years. I think it was a Matt Damon movie years and years and years ago. About this. Sally Fields was in it, and they had sent, this insurance company sent a letter to the people and said, what are you, stupid? We've denied this. You're not getting this care. And eventually the child died. And they sued and they won a bunch of money and all of this stuff. And there was a movie. Oh, it was a great movie because, hey, they won. No, they didn't win. They got some money out of it. The person died. And for me, that's the tragedy in all of this. That's the angering part of all this, because they win. They win. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Have you experienced some of this stuff? Has that ever happened to you? You ever dealt with this craziness? I sure hope not. But again, for me, it's a reason we need to have a national healthcare system, one big pool, everybody in. Billionaires, paupers, everybody. This way we make sure everyone gets access to care. Just my view. If you've missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go, wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.